Welcome to the Tour de Zwift Stage 4 group run time trial in the city of music, Bologna, Italy. It's January 27th, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, USA. This is Peter, your host, and at this very moment, I'm enjoying a homemade cappuccino. Coming up right now, some quick headline news, but first a summary of today's topics, which include pacers for runners, artificial intelligence and running form, and the Tarahumara. More on that later. These segments will run 1 to 3 minutes approximately. Moving over to headline news, a new wave-like technology system has been deployed in the Netherlands on a stadium track. As well as pacing events, it flashes red for false starts, white for stadium records, and blue for special effects. The Hong Kong Marathon, which was set to take place on Saturday, February 8th, has been cancelled in the wake of the coronavirus outbreak. Okay, we are just about set to get started here. A minute 30, and we have currently 62 runners in the pen. I'm seeing a lot of names here. Of course, once again, everyone is wearing the same shirt. And looks like most of the people are on their treadmills, ready to go. A lot of sunglasses today too, even though it's nighttime. Okay. As I mentioned in the text, shout outs to Pete Byrne, Melanie, Schick, and I think Tim Gross is also here. And he does record his own runs as well. So we'll try and find him in the pack. So it's a beautiful nighttime in Bologna. We've got lots of street lamps, starry sky, no clouds. And there's quite a few people warming up. As you can see, they're all warming up at different paces. And then those people who are not doing anything on the treadmill, you'll see their figure just standing. "20 seconds to go." I did get a couple of comments from runners that I should include more than just the top 5, so I'll make an effort to do that in this video. Oh yeah, and there was a husband and wife team. I don't know if that's a first or not. And they're off. Okay, we see the pack. And we're going to wind our way slowly through this. Engström from Sweden, Perroquet, France, Van Dinter from USA. And this is kind of the view you have when you're sort of in the middle of a race, which is nice because you have a whole bunch of runners around you. In a 5K, of course, depending on the size of the 5K, runners can get strung out. We got a guy with a mohawk there too. Interesting. All right, we're on B Whiting, USA. Let's move up a little bit. Got Cryogen team there. And I'm not sure if this is the one I made a mistake on. It looked like a female runner, but I couldn't tell. And I got kicked out, so let's go back. Well, quick view of a cyclist there. And as you can see, they have really cool neon tires. Alright, so appears to be quite a full moon. As you can see, the very strong shadows at nighttime. Frobein from Germany, 5:36 pace. And I see Tim Gross at the top of the screen, running at a 5:10. One of the other details that I noticed on these is a lot of street signs, and they're quite accurate. So a speed limit sign, for instance. There's the trash bins on the left. Okay, run Daisy Run Pod. Oh, that's the one that I think I got wrong because of the name D-A-Z. So I put it together and figured it's a woman. So apologies to you. I was thinking about something while we move up the list here, which is I remember watching Vatican Radio in Italy, and they had 4 people in the studio. One was doing the announcing, and the other 3 were doing everything possible to make the announcer laugh. It's absolutely hilarious. I mean, they were writing things down, making funny drawings, all kinds of unusual gesticulations. So I was thinking, if there is ever audio feedback, for a runner that records themselves, like Stephen Cousins, for instance, I mention him all the time. We could have the audience saying funny things, see if we can get him to crack up, and then he's unable to run. So that could be sort of a contest. All right, on to the number 1 runner, who is from the UK, and that is G. O'Brien. Running at a solid 4 flat pace about, and 600 meters in. He's got those, purple socks, purple shoes, so it all sort of blends in. Very colorful. So he's just moving along. He's about 22 seconds ahead of Cedar. And that's the Swedish flag, I believe. And then we have Anderson in 3rd. Problem Zone, which is a very interesting name. I'd like to know the origin of that. And then Hjorterberg in 5th place. Okay. And at some point, as I mentioned, we're going to have a couple topics that we discuss. I wrote some material down on that, so I'll break for them. They won't be too long, so it won't take us from the action, which of course you can always watch on the screen. And in 4th place, we have P. Dickens, who is 3:22, so he is going to be moving up into 1st very quickly unless someone responds. And I think this is the one I said is pretty well color coordinated. Got the orange socks, orange shorts, kind of orange hair, and orange headband. And he is now in... I've clicked on him and it says 2nd, but it looks like he's in 3rd place. Well, he's 2nd now. So he'll be moving into the lead. I don't know if he's putting on a speed burst to catch up. And that's something, as a runner in Zwift, you really don't know what the intentions are, especially since you can't see them. All right, so we have 2K UK runners, 1 and 2, Sweden 3 and 4, and Germany 5. One of the things I've noticed, and maybe I'm just imagining it, but a couple of the German runners and runs that I was in seem to pay a lot of attention to the countries that are represented. So those very finely detailed cobblestones. And it's, I mean, some of these renderings are really, really high quality. Especially when you consider that they're running through an entire environment. So he comes around the corner, and a cyclist is whizzing past him. By the looks of it, the air looks pretty clean. No traffic on these roads, of course. And we go over to a helicopter view, and now over to Problem Zone. Heart rate of 123. Wow, that is low. So if you wanted to kick it up, he could easily do that. And he's being tracked by Hjorterberg, who is just 1 second behind. And we're about 6 minutes into the race. I'm going to break away real quick for our first topic, which is artificial intelligence and a study that was done on running form. hat tip to sweat science. So, calling in our robot overlords, let them sort through the mountains of data and see what they come up with. That, in essence, is the approach in a new study from researchers at universities in Finland and Canada. They ran the data from 3D gait analysis of a bunch of runners, some injured, some healthy, through a form of artificial intelligence called unsupervised machine learning, to see if it could group the runners into categories based on their strides, and whether those categories would reflect the types of injuries the runners were subject to. The answer, yes to the first question, strides, no to the second, figuring out injuries, are both worth thinking about. The cluster analysis divided the runners into 5 groups, each of which was distinct from all the other groups. To give one example, one group had runners whose knees collapsed and flexed the most during running. Another group was characterized by stiff limbs, that's probably me, as indicated by knees and hips that bent less than usual. A third had a pronounced heel strike and big changes in foot angle through the stride. Picking out these subgroups with the naked eye, as it used to be done, or even by manually combing through the gait analysis data, would have been all but impossible. But in retrospect, with AI, the patterns are quite distinct. The researchers started with the hypothesis that these groupings would map onto the runner's injury diagnosis. So in other words, your form would act as a predictor for whatever injury you might be susceptible to. You might think that the group with collapsing and flexing knees would rack up the most injuries, but there was no pattern. The various types of injuries, as well as the ratio of injured and healthy runners, were distributed pretty much randomly across all the groups. How you run, according to the biomechanics equivalent of Deep Blue, doesn't determine whether, where, or how you get injured. This has some interesting implications. If the results are confirmed in further trials, it suggests that, as the researchers put it, there is not a single protective gait pattern, reducing the likelihood of developing runner-related injuries. On Twitter, Rod Whiteley, a prominent physiotherapist at the Aspetar Sports Medicine Hospital, floated the suggestion that each of us adapts to the idiosyncrasies of our own running style. Injury risk, in this view, comes from changes in your training load, rather than, say, the angle of your knee. That echoes retired University of Calgary biomechanist Benno Nigg's take. 80% of running injuries, he used to say, result from training errors, like increasing your mileage too quickly or not taking enough recovery. That's quite interesting, because I've been spending a lot of time trying to work on my stride mechanics, and maybe I'm old school and everything is changing. I had covered food in my prior video, and that too is very unique to each individual. So as one of the runners commented in the Zwift Runners forum when I was talking to him, and he said, I don't worry about my style and all that. I just run. And that kind of makes sense, because the natural outcome of doing that is his body would probably adapt to run the fast given his particular physiology. So, something to ponder. Anyway, let's get back to the race, or the run. This is a training run. And I'm on Jay Hunter, who is right now in 3rd place. And I see 3 UK flags, 1, 2, and 3, and then 2 Swedish flags in 4th and 5th. Hunter is running down a beautiful tree-lined avenue. So we are in the suburbs now. Pretty wide roads they have in Bologna. And as you can see on the left, we have a few football pitches. Hunter's got the smoking purple shoes. No heart rate, 155 cadence, 405 pace. So this race is a little slower than some of the other ones, but sometimes people may be doing a progression run and you'll see some speeding up. Dickens in first with a 21-second lead. O'Brien right behind. Let's take a look at someone who's kind of lurking. Mulaf from Specific Performance. I'm sure I'm garbling that one. Running at a 3:43 pace, 162 beats per minute, so definitely can call on some more power if he needs or decides to. From Canada in 8th position. Nice helicopter view, and look at the shadowing detail in the motion. Got to be impressed by what all these, the sheer amount of work that goes into designing these things. It's just incredible. I'm more familiar with renderings that architects do, and that involves a lot of work too, and of course that's got to be absolutely precise. So we just passed a right-on symbol on the ground. Crowd is waving. Back on O'Brien, and he's rocking. You see that head swaying a little bit? Got that really good motion going. And over to Frobein in Germany, who's currently in 4th place. 170 cadence. So not too many heart rates in the top 5 runners. And so now we have a German in 4th place. The Swedes may be slowing down. And once again, not a race, just doing your thing. Another one that looks interesting is Taurus in 6th. Is that the Spanish flag? I don't have my assistant who can look up flags for me. So we'll take a look. And this view is kind of like from a bicycle, what you would see. Okay, Frobein from BHC. So a lot of teams here. I used to belong to a running team. I met them by accident on the track. Really nice people. And they invited me to join their workout, and that was all she wrote. We ended up staging, I think, 2 or 3 5K races, which went really well. I hope one day we can reconstruct them, and had suggested that we create the team and go there. Oh, Taurus making a move, 3:27 pace, 170 steps per minute, so he's moved already into 4th place. We'll see if he decides to hold that position. Flying by on the bridge. You know, when you run in urban environments, sometimes do you ever think like you pass a really nice cafe or outdoor restaurant, you can see briefly what the people are eating. Might be tempting to just stop and grab something and then continue. The last topic I'll talk about, Tarahumara runners, they do that in their way, in ultra runs. So they'll be running 100 miles, and at 40 miles they'll stop, sit down, and have a traditional dish. Whereas we'll just be, gulping things and keep running. So back to G. O'Brien, 2nd place, 4:01. People doing the wave. A businessman not paying attention. And yeah, O'Brien's at 164 beats per minute, 41 seconds behind Dickens. So Dickens is approaching the halfway point and should have this locked up. It's pretty rare that I see somebody come back from that kind of a deficit. And here we go, back with Dickens again, who is out in the open fields. In the UK, they call that a park run. Got a record in my park run. I heard that in an ad on a radio station. All right. So we are about 15 minutes in. I have to keep track of time because I'd like to talk about my next subject, which is pacers. So I'll break to that in just a second while you watch P. Dickens. So, pacers. There are many different ways that you can have pacers. You can actually have a person doing it, which is, a really fun way. You could have your watch do it, and those first two, not so accurate. And then there's some emerging technologies, as I mentioned in the headline news. If you're running on a track, they have a computerized pacer. So I'm thinking at some point they might have sort of lightweight VR goggles or something like that, and it might project something in front of you and figure it out. So, as I said, pacers, like the rest of us, aren't always perfect. And what I mean by that is they may end the race in the appointed time, but the pacing strategy isn't always even. And that's something really to think about, because, and I was thinking about pacers on Zwift. Volunteering is one, or trying to beat my PB and having somebody pace me. And what I'd probably do is break down the run into three components. One, sort of my starting pace. Second, where I start to go negative split. And then third, in the last 800, where I kind of ramp it up kind of steadily. Like I'll do the first 400 of that, crank it up maybe half mile, and the last 400, another half mile or so. Based on prior runs. Anyway, if you were trying to run a half marathon 15 minutes slower than your best time, like many pacers do, you could easily run the first 2 miles 2 minutes too fast and still finish. But if you run too fast, well, then if you're going for a PR, you're going to fade pretty hard towards the end. I don't think pacers intentionally start out too fast, go breezing through the water stops, or don't run an optimal race strategy, but it can happen to the best of them. And that's why Kipchoge had that elaborate setup. If you had ever looked at the video, I mean, there was actually a laser on the ground, and this sort of phalanx of runners in front of him. And of course, even they weren't perfect. I think I heard something about him getting a little impatient and kind of amping up the pace because they weren't going as fast as they needed to at one point. But yeah, all just to say, if you're slightly off pace, you can ruin someone's chances at a PR finish. So taking example of Zwift, you could have a runner, let's say, who tries to beat a personal 5K record of 19 minutes 30 seconds. You could have a running bot in the program. You could create a running bot by just going in there and using Treadmill Smart Speed or some of the other apps out there. Or you could have, and this would be really fun, is to get a volunteer pacer run the 5K. And huge advantage of having a treadmill, you can set the speed, you can increase it, so they can map out exactly how they should run the different intervals in the 5K and customize it according to your program goals. So you want a negative split? Easy, done. Okay, let's get back to the action. So G. O'Brien in third place. We still have the 3 UK people at the top. And then Mulaf from Canada in fourth, and Frobein from Germany in fifth. I see Torres on the screen, who is running a bit slower, so maybe taking a little break there. And then Anderson, problem 1, Hjorteberg, Peterson, Bodak, USA, and C. Davis, USA. We're the Americans. Okay, so Dickens has 2.8 kilometers. That's a little bit more than 1.5 miles. And he's running a very steady pace. Very, very steady. And that's a sign of a seasoned runner. Quite a large percentage of runners, they go out way too fast. And those are the ones that you start passing usually in the first mile, let's say, of a 5K. The seasoned runners will try to, of course, negative split. And then in the last lap or so, or the equivalent of a lap, which is 400 meters, they will accelerate even more. But again, going back to the less experienced runners, and I've seen this in many races, you'll see some guy running a 5K in 21 minutes, and he is sprinting the last 200 meters at a crazy speed. So sometimes a spectator will chime in and go, "Hey buddy, too much energy, spread it out." Okay, so Dickens just clipping along. No Italians at the bus stops, since the road is closed off. And to a nice skyline view here. I think the next race takes place run takes place in New York, and we have two more after that. I'd love to see one in Switzerland. Especially Zurich. Was there not too long ago. Absolutely beautiful place. It's every time you open your eyes, there's a postcard in front of you. Jay's specific performance, Mulaf. Okay, in fourth place. 3:52 pace, 36 seconds behind O'Brien, and slowly chipping away at that lead. So we'll see what happens. And he's got a nice pair of sunglasses. Those look like the Ray-Ban JFK type, one of the classics. Alright, coming up on 20 minutes. And I think I better jump into my last story because Dickens is going to be finishing pretty quickly. So let me talk about the Tarahumara. Tarahumara, quite a tongue twister that one. Public racing began at the 1928 Olympic Marathon. The two Indians that were running were not aware of the distance, and when they finished, they weren't even tired and said, "Too short, too short." People must have been thinking, what's going on here? Because, actually, there were quite a few people that knew about it back then. So, running more than 26 miles a day, that's a menial task to a Tarahumara. It's like one of their daily chores. In fact, their landscape is constructed in such a way that the only way you can get around is by walking. And if you want to get there quicker, you run. And a lot of them do that. In fact, even their games are oriented around running. Come back to the Americans, running, that's an all-consuming feat. I did a marathon. These people, the Tarahumara, are known worldwide as the running Indians, and they now routinely run in the ultra world. After many scientific tests, doctors have come to the conclusion that the Tarahumara's endurance is based more on conditioning than on heredity. So, note that one down. Experts believe that the two main causes for the Tarahumara's amazing endurance are physical conditioning and this plays a very interesting role, cultural importance. Diet also seems to play an important role in their running. Their diet is practically meatless and consists mostly of complex carbohydrates. They eat approximately 10% proteins, 10% fat, and 80% complex carbohydrate. Maybe they should come up with a cookbook, start a new fad. Balanced diet is believed to be one factor behind the Tarahumara's resiliency. A little story about a race that occurred in 1867. Yes, they had 100-mile races back then, so they kind of invented those. It was a mountain trail race, and it was reported by the New York Herald. 8 Tarahumara women had competed in a 100-mile trail race. The competition was between two rival villages that were about 10 miles apart, Bologna and Sisuguici. Each village sent their 4 fastest women runners. The course was wrapped around an oblong mountain located somewhere between the two villages. The runners needed to run around it 14 times for a distance of about 100 miles. So that's great for spectators. You get to see everything. Well, if you're there the whole time, I mean that's an entire day event, and I think they made an event out of it. So that's pretty cool. Guards were posted around the course to make sure that the race was competed fairly. So even there, back then, they had people who might have tried to cheat. And huge crowds of people came from many villages to witness the event. Man, I wish we celebrated running like that. This race started at 6:35 a.m. The whole bevy were off at the word go amid the wildest excitement, and the betting commenced. Yep, there was betting. After the first loop of about 7 miles, 5 women were together in the lead. The only stops they made were to accept prizes along the way. Did they have backpacks? Drink water or eat pinoli, a simple gruel made of parched corn, ground and sweetened with sugar. After about 92 miles, only 3 women were left in contention. But by the last lap, a lone contending runner from Sisuguchi had fallen off the pace. The 2 winners were from Bologna and were received with the loudest shout of joy by their townspeople. They finished in a time of 13 hours and 25 minutes. But wait till you hear this one. I mean, we whine and complain. One of the women who finished had given childbirth just 10 days earlier. I mean, just think about that. Heavy betting took place. Horses, cattle, sheep, pigs, goats, cats, dogs, and other items changed hands. And at the finish, I love this, nearly everyone was on the ground drunk. Great stuff. All right, so I'm on to the 26th runner, Daisy Run Pod, which I had mistaked for a female, but got a clear frontal shot here, because that's kind of the only way you can tell in Zwift sometimes. It harkens back to when I was a youngster and guys started growing long hair, and you look from the back, you had no idea. So Daisy at a 4:50 pace. Well, you're getting more attention because I thought you were the first female. And here I am texting in, not a female runner, guys. I wonder if he was laughing. From the UK. M. Lord behind him, USA, J. Ray, UK, and Tim Gross. I wonder how he's doing. So there's M. Lord, and there's Tim Gross. And just scrolling through the runners, we have Cryogen, and that looks like our first female. So 32nd position, running at a nice clip of 5:18, only 133 beats per minute. So easy pace for this runner. Got it down. All right. Learning so much here. Some of these names represent bloggers. One of the other runners in the prior race that I talked about, I think it was I forget what it was, mountainroad.com or something. He's a nationally ranked triathlete. So you never know who's on here. You kind of, you see the avatars and you start to forget there's real humans behind it. So let's scroll back up, see what's going on in the top 5. Oh, Hunter. Wow. See what happens when I'm not paying attention? Just about wrapping up at 3:50 pace. So he must have passed O'Brien, because I think O'Brien was in first place. Just motoring down. There's the finish line. So I'm going to go to the 3rd position. Mulaf, who is following O'Brien very closely. They have... Oh, wait. He's half a kilometer, so he must have started late. So it doesn't quite count, but still fun to watch. So he's tracking. Definitely tracking. Only 1 second behind. And he's kicking a bit. Trying to catch up. Go, 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 go. What's O'Brien gonna do? Is he watching? Muloff is closing in. He's almost on the shadow of O'Brien. O'Brien's got, less than 100 meters to go. O'Brien's responding. Okay. He can see what's going on. He's not going to let Muloff catch him. So, crashing through the final gate at 3:25 pace or so. Again, thinking about virtual people, maybe you could get not just participate as a spectator on the side, but you could be at the finish line and welcome your relative or friend or work colleague who has just completed a race. I'm fantasizing about all this stuff, but it's a lot of programming work. So we have Frobein from Germany in 4th and 5th. So the Germans have got the 4th and 5th spots. And I think he has just finished. That's why I got kicked out. I'm going to take a look at some of the other runners in here. Oh no, he's still in there. Okay, about 100 to go. Coming up to the Macy's Day Squirrel with the cap on. Nice profile shot. Problem zone a minute behind him, so nothing to worry about there. Going over the pedestrian crosswalk, and he's done. So we're going to go over to problem zone, and Torres has just passed him at a blistering 2:59 pace. So close to an all-out sprint. Torres is opening up a huge gap. I think problem zone is just going to chill and hang in there. No, he's picking up speed. So he's not going to catch Torres, but he's going to try and keep that gap down to maybe under 10 or 12 seconds. All right, Torres. On to problem zone. 3:37, finishing up. And done. So I'm going to wrap up here in less than 2 minutes. And that is our top female runner. Still at a very nice steady pace, 135 beat per minute. So this is a nice workout. Cryogen team. Have to check them out as well. USA. 179 cadence. So she's got about 1.4 kilometers to go. And I see Pete Bird down there. There he is. 5:11. I think Pete runs quite fast. I think I've seen him in some other runs, so he's doing a nice and slow pace today. Right, almost in the middle of the pack. 35th. Got 86 active runners. So we're going to wrap up here in just a second. Yep. The text messages help me figure out where I am in the video. I think I posted one more. Okay, thanks everyone for participating, and we'll see you at the next one, which I'll be recording.